Nationalism was a force for unity or disunity in the 1800s. Nationalists believed that people of a single nationality should unite under a single government. They were not loyal to kings and were a threat to people seeking to restore the old monarchies. There are three types of nationalist movements. The first is unification, and this is characterized by mergers of politically divided but culturally similar lands. The second is separation, and this is characterized by when a culturally distinct group resists being added to a state or tries to break away. And third is state building, and this is characterized by when a culturally distinct group form into a new state by accepting a single culture. Germany united in the 1800s. 39 German states called the German Confederation was dominated by the Austrian Empire, but Prussia decided to unify all the German states. Prussia had a mainly German population, therefore they had strong nationalism. They also had the strongest army in Central Europe to back them up. In Prussia in 1861, Wilhelm succeeded Frederick William to the throne. After the parliament denied Wilhelm money to strengthen his army, Wilhelm chose Otto von Bismarck to be his prime minister. Bismarck was a master of realpolitik and declared that he would rule without consent of parliament and without a legal budget. In 1864, Prussia and Austria went to war with Denmark, and two quick victories increased national pride amongst Prussians. Prussia purposely created conflict with Austria about the territories of Schleswig and Holstein, and this led to the 7 Weeks' War. The Prussians humiliated Austria and won, and with their victory, Prussia took part in northern Germany, and for the first time, the eastern and western parts of the Prussian kingdom were joined. The Franco-Prussian War. A few southern German states remained independent of Prussian control. These states, who were predominantly Catholic, did not want to be controlled by the Protestant Prussians. Bismarck thought he could gain their support if they faced an outside threat, so Bismarck made it seem like France's ambassador insulted the Prussian king. France then declared war on Prussia, and the nationalist epidemic swept through the southern states. On January 18, 1871, King Wilhelm of Prussia was crowned Kaiser. Italy had been politically divided for a while. The southern half of Italy was the kingdom of Naples, Sicily, and was ruled by King Ferdinand II. The north of Naples, Sicily, was Rome and the Papal States, and these were ruled by Pope Pius IV, and he depended on the French and Austrian soldiers to maintain his position over these territories. In the far north of Italy was Venetia and Lombardy, and that was under Austrian rule. In the far northwest was the Kingdom of Sardinia, a liberal constitutional monarchy. In the Crimean War, Sardinia-Piedmont fought with France against the Russians, and in the wake of the war, Napoleon III supported Piedmont-Sardinia against an opponent of Italian nationalism, Austria. Austria's army was very unprepared, and in June 1859, Sardinia-Piedmont defeated the Austrians. The war gave hope to urban masses down the Italian peninsula, and the people began to rise up against foreign rule. In July 1859, a compromise peace was established at the Conference of Villafranca, and then came a pro-democracy uprising across Sicily. 1,000 nationalist volunteers led by Giuseppe Garibaldi arrived in Sicily on May 11, 1860, and in 3 months he and his volunteers were in control of Sicily. Garibaldi and his men moved into the southern half of the Italian peninsula and entered into Naples. The new Kingdom of Italy was proclaimed on March 17, 1861, and became a parliamentary monarchy under King Victor Emmanuel II. Imperialism. Imperialism is a policy in which one country seeks to extend its authority by conquering other countries or by establishing economic and political dominance over other countries. There are 4 forms of imperialism. The first is colony, and this is when a country or a territory is governed internally by a foreign power. The second is protectorate, and this is when a country or a territory has its own internal government but is under control of an outside power. The third is the sphere of influence, and this is when an outside power claims exclusive investment or trading privileges. And the third is economic imperialism, and this is when an independent but less developed country is controlled by private business interests rather than the government. While there are 4 forms of imperialism, there are 2 methods of it. The first is indirect control, and in this method, local governments are used. There is limited self-rule. The goal is to develop future leaders. The government institutions are based on European styles, but may have local rules. The second is direct control, and in this method, foreign officials are brought into rule. There is no self-rule. The goal is assimilation, and the government institutions are based only on European styles. There are 4 factors promoting imperialism in Africa. The first was the Europeans were very technologically advanced and superior, and they had the Maxim gun, and that was the very first machine gun, and that was invented in 1884. They also had the steam engine that made travel easy. Third, they had the vaccine for malaria that usually kept them out of Africa before. And fourth was that Africa was a very diverse country, and that made it easier for countries to take over because they could not unite together. Diamonds and gold increased Western interests. Later, the Berlin Conference made rules about dividing Africa. In this conference, any European country could claim land in Africa as long as they notified the other nations. The only people who weren't invited to this conference were the African rulers, and they gave no consideration to the diversity of Africa. The main reason European nations wanted African territory so bad is because of their extensive resources. Once the European nations claimed their bits and pieces of Africa, they started crash crop plantations. The clash over Africa. Shaka's well-organized state was not maintained after his death, and his successors could not keep it together due to constant British invaders. Soon the Boers, who were Dutch, took over African lands, and the Boers came to establish a way station for their ships sailing between Dutch and East Indies in the Netherlands. Then the Boers and the British started to clash over the British slave and land policy, and the Boers were forced north by the British and then started to clash with the Zulu. The Boers tried to keep outsiders from gaining political rights when they discovered diamonds and gold, which then started the Boer War between the Boers and Britain won. The Dutch East Indian Company made it very difficult for the Indian economy to run on its own. India became more valuable to Britain because of their cash crops of tea, indigo, coffee, cotton, jute, and opium. Some negative effects of British colonialism was that the Britain held political and economic power, and the focus on cash crops reduced food production that led to famine, and that the presence of mercenaries and racist attitudes threatened traditional Indian lives. But some positive effects were India was now home of the world's third largest railroad network, and this led to a modern economy. They also got telegraph lines, dams, bridges, and irrigation canals that also led to modernization, and sanitation and public health improved, and schools and colleges were founded, and literacy increased. The sepoys rebelled after hearing about the new rifle cartridges, and after this rebellion, Ram Moham Roy began campaigning that India needed to move away from its traditional practices. But besides this, the nationalist feelings began to rise again, and two nationalist groups formed, the Indian National Congress and the Muslim League. The U.S. acquired the Philippine Islands, Puerto Rico, and Guam as a result of the Spanish-American War. The Filipino nationalists were not happy with this and declared independence, and the U.S. defeated the Filipinos but built roads, railroads, hospitals, and set up school systems to help them govern themselves. However, with the push for cash crops, this led to food shortages. And also the U.S. set up sugar plantations in Hawaii, and by the mid-19th century, that became 75% of Hawaii's wealth, and in time of peril for the businessmen, they overthrew Hawaii's queen, and a wealthy plantation owner named Sanford B. Dole became president of the new Republic of Hawaii.